Imagine you have insomnia, you're in high school, you fall asleep and hardly talk to anyone, until one day while looking for a place to rest, you meet a girl who's just like you, and now you can't sleep because you're thinking about her. This is the story of Nakami, who despite trying her hardest, can't fall asleep and is left waiting for daybreak to go to school, where there's a rumor about a student from the astronomy club. The girl was sad every day because of her unrequited love, and since her departure, each of the students in the club became ill one by one. They saw the silhouette of a girl, so teachers shut the club, and it's been a storage room, or so rumors say. Anamisu asks Kanikawa to help with festival decorations. Kanikawa says if she wants help, wake our protagonist. So Nakami must find more boxes, since she works faster and rests. Then a classmate shows a mask, scaring her, but it's just Nono from art club. Kanikawa tells her to wake up our protagonist if she needs help. Nakami must find more boxes, though she works faster and can rest. A classmate shows a mask, scaring the protagonist, but it's just Nono from art club. Nakami seems grumpy because no one knows she has insomnia. Others live peacefully while she suffers nightly. Seeing him down, Ukagawa, Nakami's friend who knows her problem, approaches. When she leaves, we realize that for everyone, Nakami is really grumpy because no one knows she has insomnia. Everyone else is living their lives so peacefully, and he's the only one suffering every night. Yusen seeing him so depressed, Ukagawa approaches him. He is one of his best friends and knows about his problem. Nakami can't sleep at night no matter how hard she tries, so Ukagawa tells her to just sleep in the nurse's office. But if she does, people would think she's crazy. Well, crazier. Nakami goes back to the boxes, but since there aren't enough, she'll go look in the observatory. She closes the door, and the place is so dark and quiet that it would be perfect for a nap. When she lies down, she realizes that someone is sleeping next to her, and when she looks, it turns out to be a girl who has just woken up. She runs out and covers herself so she won't be recognized, but Nakami knows who she is. Her name is Magari, and they are in the same class. Magari tries to leave, but the lock has always been broken, so once it's closed, can only be opened from the outside, which means they're now trapped. Our protagonist didn't bring her phone, so the only way out would be to try to open the observatory to escape from there, and she needs something to light the way, so Magari uses the flashlight on her phone. Nakami tells her to use the phone to call someone, but she doesn't want any of her friends to find out she was there, since it turns out she's been having headaches all day because she can't sleep at night. She doesn't want to worry anyone else, so she won't risk her secret. Seeing that Magari is just like him, he tells her that his best friend knows his secret and can help them since he also has insomnia. He sends him a message, and all that's left is to wait for him to come rescue them. Nakami feels comfortable waiting next to her and tells her that he found a good hiding spot, but he was scared because when he found her in the locker, he thought she was the ghost of the observatory. Magari doesn't believe any of his stories, since it turns out she created the rumor so that no one would come near and she could sleep peacefully in her free time. Both exhausted from lack of sleep, they fall asleep, and when they wake up, Nakami had the best nap of her life. At that moment, Ukagawa arrives to rescue them, and before leaving, Magari writes a number on her hand to share it with our protagonist. It's the key to the club's lock, and now she can come back whenever she wants. Next day in the nurse's office, Professor Kurashiki attends to Nakami, who had hurt herself during one of the festival activities. The teacher suggests that she should sleep a bit more at night, but our protagonist tells her that she doesn't have trouble sleeping, she's just stressed. At that moment, Magia arrives, who also got hurt, along with a cat that takes the teacher's lunch lettuce. As they leave, Magari asks how things are going for her since she hasn't been to the observatory lately. Our protagonist tells her that it's actually because he's not that good at talking to girls, but she can't sleep if he's not by her side in the observatory. It turns out that Magari just wanted her to come over to help her move some furniture, although she did it so they could have more space to relax. She also turned on the lights, and since she arrived, Magari wanted to ask what he does at night, and our protagonist tells her that he just reads books and listens to anime summaries. You know, boring stuff. So Magari wants them to use that time to do fun things, taking advantage of the night and not regretting it in the future. So, in the early morning, Nakami meets up with her, and now there are 2 members in their new nightclub. They walk through the dark cities, and the protagonist feels more and more nervous, although he's not the only one because Magari was also scared to sneak out of her house. But she's gotten over it. They walk through the shopping area, joking around and drinking juice, and Nakami also brought a camera in case they get stopped to pretend they're a photography club, but that would be more suspicious. Magari asks him if he likes taking photos because the camera is of very good quality, but it's just a gift from her dad since she asked for a game console and instead they gave her a camera. Nakami also wants to know more about her, and it turns out that since she was little, she had health problems and was often hospitalized. At that moment, police officer comes up behind them and they have to hide. They're so close that Magari can hear the beating of his heart, and it's so relaxing that she fell asleep, dealing with her illness. Now she exercises more and feels much better, but she still doesn't want to worry anyone with her sleep problems, although if they can see such beautiful landscapes, maybe it's not a problem. Nakami takes a photo to remember this moment forever, and on the way to the river, he takes some pictures of Magari. Finally, dawn has arrived and both of them are feeling sleepy again. On the way home, they exchange numbers and all the sleepless nights be easier to get through if she's by his side. Before going to school, Nakami makes lunch for her dad, and when she arrives in her classroom, she sees Magari, but she doesn't talk to her since they can't let anyone know they know each other, or else they'd discover the observatory and her secret. Magari agrees, and the protagonist gets nervous just looking at her. Still, they keep chatting through text messages. They plan to clean up and bring blankets and cushions so they can sleep more comfortably, while Magari's friends and Ukagawa notice how focused they are. When Nakami arrives at the observatory, he finds a bunch of toys everywhere. And Magari brought them because studies show that a cozy place helps you sleep better since your body relaxes, an environment it enjoys. But they still need a place to sleep because the floor isn't exactly soft. In the library, Magari and Anamisu wonder where the school cat came from, and it seems it still doesn't have a name, but Kanekawa tells them they need to help with the investigation since they have to turn in a project in a few days. Since it's such a quiet place, Nakami falls asleep and they all tease him, but when he wakes up, he finds some armchairs and calls Magari to come see them after school. They're perfect for the observatory, and they're pretty heavy to carry, so they can only manage one, although they still have to decide who will be the first to use it. After the protagonist loses, Magari sits on the throne and rests her feet on his back. Suddenly they hear a noise, so they both have to hide, but it was just the school cat who falls asleep on the armchair. Since he's so good at sleeping, he'll be the new member of the club, and his name will be Tsu. The next day, Akami brought some tools to fix the doorknob so they wouldn't get locked in anymore. Magari will go see him after swimming club and suggest that he should join some activity too, but our protagonist isn't really into those things. He can only think about fixing the lock. Meanwhile, his classmate bought some ice cream to celebrate, and when he finally manages to fix the door, Kat brings a lettuce along with the teacher. Kurashiki-sensei asks him what he's doing with the door, and when she goes up, she realizes that the observatory is fixed, and Nakami takes responsibility for everything. Soon after, Magari arrives, and seeing the teacher, she knows they're in trouble. The teacher just wants to know if they were up to no good, but that's not the case. The protagonist confesses that this is actually the place they come to rest since they both have insomnia, and Magari says it's all her fault for forcing Nakami to come, but they both ask for permission to let them stay. Kurashiki-sensei is surprised because they cleaned up, but she still has to inform the school and their parents since the telescope isn't cheap, and the school is thinking about using it but doesn't know how. This is where Nakami suggests joining the astronomy club, and if that's the only way to stay, our protagonist will give it a try, but it all depends on the teacher. When she leaves, there's still a bit of melted side dish left, and it will be the last meal. What was her biggest dream? The next day, both of them are called to the teacher's lounge. And when they arrive, they are ready for their punishment. But officially, they are now the new members of the astronomy club. In fact, they are happy that the observatory is being used because it is quite expensive. Urashigi-sensei will be their tutor. Outside, they laugh uncontrollably. Nakami must join activities. and the teacher suggests attending student committee meetings to prove their legitimacy for a budget. The previous club won a national astrophotography competition, and they can consult a former member. Now that Nakami is in the astronomy club, she has to participate in club activities. Still, our protagonist doesn't know what goes on in an astronomy club, but the previous club won a national astrophotography competition, and they can go ask a former member who was the only one left in the club. Still, our protagonist doesn't know what goes on in an astronomy club, and the teacher doesn't either, but the previous club won a national astrophotography competition, and they can go ask a former member who was the only one left in the club. They arrive by train and almost fall asleep when they reach their destination. They walk through the rice fields, the sun sets, but they took the wrong path, as it actually led to an arcade where everyone is in their own world. When they enter, the caretaker says that the students can't stay, but she recognizes their uniforms and invites them into her home. She also has a German cat, and its name is Shiromaru, or rather, that's her name, not the cat's. Nakami just wants to know what kind of activities they do in their group, but in reality, she was doing everything by herself. The rest of the club never showed up, and since the observatory was a pretty chill place, it became their secret base, 2000. Still, she realizes she has a good camera, but when she looks at her photos, they look terrible. Shiromaru tells her that she should increase the brightness and adjust the camera, and our protagonist listens to everything she says just to learn. However, when he looks at the other photos, Magari also appears in them. It's dinner time, and Nakami realizes that she's quite a lonely girl. She probably doesn't have any friends and spends her breaks all alone. But then she notices that she just described herself exactly. After eating, it's the perfect time to take some photos. After a pretty detailed tutorial on how to take a picture of the star you want, Shiromaru is happy that they are as interested as she is in capturing space in a single image. Before they leave, she promises to visit them from time to time at the observatory. After the swimming club activities, Magari goes up to the observatory and finds Shiromaru there, along with teacher Kurashiki and our protagonist, since the meeting will be to decide what to do with this club. Nakami did some research, and in August, a meteor shower is coming up, so they could organize a party for people to come and watch. This way, they could get more funding, and everyone would be happy. But since it's a really big event for a lot of people, our protagonist will need help. And since it's obvious he doesn't have any friends, Magari will take charge of gathering volunteers. Before leaving, the teacher hands her a brochure for a national astrophotography contest. And even though they're just starting out, with Shiromaru's help, they could take a good enough photo to impress their new senpai. She suggests taking a photo at a beach in Uyuni, which is exactly where they're going for their school trip. Shiromaru says that one of the perfect photos would be having the starry sky reflected in the ocean waves, and with a little patience, a good shot could come out. Nakami hands all her notes to the teacher, and it seems that her lack of sleep now has a new purpose, a meaning, because now, along with Magari, they can make the most of their insomnia to photograph the stars in the astronomy club. That same night, Shiromaru gets ready to go out, takes her cat for a walk, till they reach the top of a shrine, sets up her camera, and cooks some pancakes for dinner. After a while, the camera took some amazing photos, and she's scared to send them to Nakami and Magari because it's 2 a.m. Her cat helps her, and they were both awake. They want to support her in taking a photo like that someday, and Shiromaru is happy to have found friends who share her passion for the night. The cat helps her, and they were both awake. They want to support her in taking a photo like that someday. And Shiromaru is happy to have found friends who share her passion for the night. Now it's Nakami's turn, and she's getting ready to take a photo near her house, while Magari is having bubble tea with her friends. They are quite worried about the exam results, but it's pointless to suffer over something that has already happened. The bad thing is that Kanikawa couldn't finish his test because when he was on the last question, he noticed that Nakami had already finished, got distracted, and ran out of time. That's why he can't stand it. Magari takes the opportunity to invite them to her party, telling them that she joined the astronomy club along with the protagonist, and they will have a night activity at school. They all agree to go, but it's still way too hot since it's summer. With the festival approaching, Nono tells them the legend of the 7 bridges of the Misohi River, saying that if you cross them with the person you love, your relationship will last forever. It would be perfect for Magari to go out with the person she likes. However, Nakami isn't too fond of fireworks, and Nono realizes that she already has someone special. On the other hand, Nakami talks to Ukagawa to ask for permission to take her camera on the school trip. Since he's a member of the council, he can make a difference. In exchange, Ukagawa asks to meet her senpai and takes advantage of the moment when he gets distracted to beat him at shogi. But he's not the only one who can use this trick, as he asks about Magari and if he has already invited her to the summer festival. Nakami gets so distracted that he loses and has to invite Ukagawa to lunch. On the way back, they exchange glances with Magari, and it's clear that they both have a special relationship. When Nakami goes to practice with Shiromaru, Ukagawa goes with him, and the senpai can't believe that the protagonist actually has friends. When she sees the photos he took, she tells him that he needs to keep practicing, and in the meantime, he should set up the tent. Ukagawa can't help him since he has to work, so he calls Magari because in a relationship of two, a third wheel just gets in the way. They are both alone at Shiromaru's house, and the protagonist takes the opportunity to study his notes. When Magari sees them, he doesn't understand anything, but it encourages him because soon his photos will be like professional ones. While he has the technique, it's hard to take a good photo because it all depends on the person taking and the message they want to convey through their work. To distract him, Magari draws some desserts to promote her meteor shower party, and after drawing a few fried eggs, they realize they will need help. Right now, they're looking at the photos Nakami took, but he can't stop staring at her. It's a bit embarrassing, so he takes the chance to invite her to see the fireworks at the summer festival, and Magari agrees. The cat had seen all of this, and so had Shiromaru, who was at the door. Back at school, the teacher is explaining everything about their school passion, and their groups will be in alphabetical order. Magari will be with her friends, while Nakami got stuck with Ruby, the most annoying guy in the class. Although it doesn't really matter who they get paired with because they won't be able to stay up late since the teacher will be waiting for them to run on the beach every morning. At night, our protagonist will ride his bike to take some photos. Ukagawa calls him to say that they didn't give him permission for the camera, and if he's still going to take it, he needs to hide it well. At night, there are too many clouds to take a good photo, and if it keeps up like this, they might not be able to take any during their trip. The protagonist returns home, and on the way, Rui recognizes him. The next day, rain lashes the whole city, and their camping trip might get cancelled, but they still go on with the activities. Kanikawa competes with Nagami to sew an apron, but it turns out badly, and he loses as usual. In the bathroom, he meets Rui, who admits seeing him outside, and promises secrecy to avoid trouble. The teacher overhears and takes them to the lounge. He suggests exercise for sleeplessness, but doesn't grasp insomnia's uncontrollable suffering. At that moment, the teacher, who had heard everything, comes out of the bathroom and takes them to the teacher's lounge. He tells them that if they can't sleep, they should exercise more to tire themselves out. But he doesn't understand all the suffering that comes with having insomnia. It's not just about staying awake, it's something they can't control. Nakami complains to the teacher about the rain, which might cancel their outing. Gari promises to meet at the beach if the night is clear. Nakami falls asleep, and when Magari wakes him, she hears his heartbeat and falls asleep too. Magari takes his face in her hands and promises that if they make it to the campsite and the night is clear, they can meet at the beach. And that's why she's hanging up charms to scare away the rain. Soon, Nakami falls asleep, and when Magari comes over to wake him up, she hears the steady, calm beating of his heart behind her. Constant and serene pulse, which makes her fall asleep too. The day of the trip has arrived and the weather is cloudy. Nakami hides her camera and prepares lunch for her dad before leaving the house, and they all head out in the trucks. Magari and her friends will be spending 3 days in the middle of nature, with no contact with civilization. They took away their cell phones, so to entertain themselves, Magari wants to play guessing games, but her friends have already done that. As for Nakami, the poor thing was trying to sleep, but with Rui in her group, it's impossible. They have arrived in Uyuni, and everyone is setting up their tents for the night. They are also gathering firewood and cooking dinner, some meals better than others. Our protagonist is pretty good at cooking, and when the girls come to try it, Rui steals all the credit. In Magari's tent, everyone is getting ready to sleep. The teachers celebrate with sake, and Nakami has to pretend to be asleep because his classmates wanted to go see the girls, but the teacher is always watching. Rui and his friends celebrate all night, and when they finally fall asleep, Kami can't. He's too tired to run, and in the middle of the activities, the rain makes its presence known. Everyone takes shelter, and Magari takes her medication even though it's so late. All the combined noise prevents our protagonist from resting, but for a moment, nothing but silence. The protagonist looks for his camera, and on his way to the beach, he finds Magari under a clear sky. The promise was kept, and now they both go out to play on the beach. The sky is beautiful, and Kurashiki-sensei couldn't sleep either, but after playing a lot, Kami realizes that the scenery is perfect for her photography. Magari screams with excitement, and Nakami joins her, laughing and showing just how happy he feels by her side. They both get out of the water and set up the camera for a few hours. All that's left is to wait, and Magari suggests some riddles, but guess what? Nakami knows them too. She realizes how little our protagonist has been sleeping. And in fact, the last time he slept well was the time they met, and Nakami thinks the same thing. They could try to sleep next to each other, as the beats of his heart help Magari to rest. They lie down, and Nakami can't handle the embarrassment. Now his heart is racing much faster, but it's enough for both of them to fall asleep. It's already dawn, and they both have to run before the teachers catch them. They take the camera, and there won't be another opportunity like this, so Nakami asks for a photo in front of the sunrise. And even though he's not a professional, at least he can brag that he knows how to capture what really it's freaking hot. And Shiromaru goes to school to visit the club. He enters carefully to avoid finding anything strange, but he only comes across Nakami. Just then, Magari arrives with a fan, and finally, they're a bit cooler. When they look at the photos they took at the beach, it turns out they didn't come out that great, and it's because any little detail affects a photo, but at least the stars are clearly visible. Kurashiki-sensei came to get his fan, and with this heat, it's better for them to go outside. Nakami goes to the mall where he sees a photo of Magari, and Ukagawa appears behind him because he works nearby. Magari arrives at that moment, and everyone enjoys their lunch. The meteor shower is almost here, and Ukagawa asked for permission to share his post around the city. Since so many people are coming, Magari has to invite her friends to help out. And regarding the photography contest, well, she can't just send in the photo of Magari, so they need to keep trying. Magari gets upset with our protagonist, and since she has a photo of herself, she wants to see how it turned out. But seeing herself is pretty embarrassing. For their next camping trip, they need to find good spots to take photos, and Nakami comes up with several ideas. They just need to ask for money for their tickets and permission from the teacher to go, as if it were a club activity, and their parents wouldn't have any issues. Before leaving, Magari asks him to take a lot of photos because she wants there to be a trace that she once existed, and then she just walks away. Nakami thinks a lot about what was said and can't sleep trying to figure it out. There's not much time left for the meteor shower and the summer festival, and they still haven't gathered enough people. Since Magari hasn't asked them yet, he'll go and ask her himself. When they find Nono, she's in the art club. They ask her for help to make a poster for their party, and she agrees. But first, she needs to finish her homework, and for that, she needs a moment. Our protagonist takes off his shirt, and when Nono is about to draw him, he gets way too embarrassed. It would be better if both of them modeled for her, preferably wearing shirts, so Nono can create a magnificent poster. Ukagawa got the permission to distribute the posters, and with his help, still need 3 more people. Nakami goes to ask Kanekawa, but she refuses. She actually hates him and would never help him, even though he's friends with Magari. Our protagonist returns angrily to the observatory where Magari is sleeping next to the cat. He must protect the astronomy club at all costs, so he's going to ask Namisu, but since she's in the middle of her training, she asks him to wait. The afternoon goes by, and our protagonist stays there, and since Namisu needs to practice, she asks for his help. She wants to become an excellent thrower, but no matter how hard she tries, keeps failing. She takes a breath and finally manages to do it. It turns out that Anamisu always wanted to help, and upon hearing that Kanakukami rejected him, she tells him to just ignore her. And in their first meeting, the girl with pigtails showed up to help. They stick the posters everywhere, and at the arcade, our protagonist asks Shiromaru for advice since he plans to leave the camp with Magari and take some photos. The girl with white hair is very embarrassed because she knows she will only be a hindrance in their relationship, but they are just friends, and if he needs help with anything related to photography, she's happy to support him. Later, everyone gathers at a restaurant to talk about the meteor shower party. The restaurant belongs to Kanakami's family, and her parents are happy that their daughter isn't causing any trouble. She has always been spoiled for being an only child, but Magari makes it clear that she is very helpful for the astronomy club. It would be a great idea to hand out the posters at the summer festival, but Kanakami refuses because she wants to find a good spot to watch them. The teacher offers them the school's roof, and Nakami thanks her since it wasn't in the plans. Kurashiki-sensei knows the protagonist is anxious. The teacher reassures him that nervousness shows he cares. At the summer festival, Magari regrets not wearing a yukata, like the athlete, due to the heat. The teacher just calms him down, saying that being nervous is normal, and the fact that he wants everything to go well means that he really cares, reassuring him that everything will go according to plan. The summer festival has arrived, and Magari picks out her outfit. When she meets up with the others, she's the only one not wearing a yukata, well, her and the athlete. But that's because it's too hot. Still, she regrets not wearing one, but it's too late now. Nakami hands out the posters and everyone splits up to distribute them. He's really grateful for their help, but it's still quite difficult to invite people. The work is done, and our protagonist gives them something to drink. We'll finish distributing the flyers so they can watch the fireworks from the school roof, but it's almost night and he still hasn't finished. Ukegawa finds her and tells her that the most important thing right now to watch the fireworks with Magari, so he runs off to catch up with her. They both meet on one of the bridges, and it turns out that Magari went home to change into her yukata. They walk through the festival together, and when they arrive at the school, no one has shown up yet, so they stroll through the hallways under the moonlight. It's practically like daydreaming. When they get to the roof, Nakami sets up the equipment for the photos. It turns out he's not really a fan of festivals, because he's always surrounded by people he doesn't know. But this time is special. Maybe it's because he's with a pretty girl, or because he's about to confess his feelings. Fireworks light up the sky, the moment is perfect, but Magari's other friends arrive to interrupt them. Still, everyone has fun and takes some photos to remember these happy moments forever. The festival is over, and while the friends leave, our protagonist will stay behind to clean up and put away all the photos they took. Magari opens the observatory roof, and Nakami looks at the photos. He always thought he was the only one suffering because of his insomnia, but he realized that everyone has their own problems, and if everyone were grumpy every time something happened, life would be very sad. However, thanks to her help, he learned that it's not always good to let bitterness take over. Sometimes, you just need to be happy. At that moment, Gary climbs to the edge of the window and looks at the festival lights in the distance. Our protagonist tells her to come down because it's quite dangerous, but she isn't afraid. Still, a gust of wind makes her slip, and before she falls, Nakami catches her in his arms. Now that they are together, the protagonist can hear her heartbeat, and it turns out that Magari had heart problems since she was little. After many surgeries, Sen managed to overcome her illness and plays sports to stay healthy. But every night when she closes her eyes, she is overwhelmed by tremendous anxiety because she fears falling asleep, never waking up again. That's why she has insomnia and can only sleep when he's by her side. Our protagonist tells her that she can share all her problems with him. They could talk for hours and he would never fall asleep. Magari breaks down in tears, and after a long hug, she feels better. The next day, everyone thanks Kurashige and Sensei, and everything goes back to how it was before. Since Magari can't sleep all night, she doesn't talk to Nakami because she's embarrassed, and she spends her time sleeping in the club. It turns out she can't call him because the noise would wake her parents, who actually don't know about her insomnia. So that same night, Nakami sends her a link to download a radio app, and when she listens to it, she realizes that the person speaking is him, sharing about his day and how the stars are shining tonight. After listening to him, Magari also gets the courage to broadcast from under her blanket so she won't be discovered. There he tells us that he has an older sister and his mother is a nurse, and it feels like they are talking right next to each other. Little by little, Leap catches up with them until they both fall asleep. The next day, Magari asks him what he thought of her radio show, but he confesses that he fell asleep halfway through it. Summer vacation officially started, and before they leave, Magari and her friends are waiting for permission for the meteor shower party, worried that Nakami might get rejected. They go to the student council to review things, and with Ukegawa's help, they manage to get the astronomy club to hold its first activity, and to celebrate, they'll have their lunch. In the council room, everyone talks about their talents, but Magari is sad because she couldn't showcase hers. At night, Nakami finally falls asleep and dreams of his mother. They are on a trip looking at the stars, but the noise from the door wakes him up. Her father is back from work. The meteor shower is approaching, and everyone is gathering the materials they need. While they work, Kanekawa asks Ukegawa how long he has known our protagonist, and they have been friends since they were very little. He used to be much more athletic, but over time he became slower and grumpier, since he always ran in his old shoes that were way too small for his feet. Kanekawa makes fun of her poverty, but Nakami appears behind her because he has the exact spots to help people get to school, and he's pretty nervous about everything going well. Now all that's left is to wait because everything is ready, and to help her relax, Magari gives her some little antennae. The next morning, there's a torrential downpour, and everyone takes shelter, puts away the telescope so it doesn't get wet. They will have to cancel the party since the weather won't change anytime soon, and all the work was for nothing. Kami apologizes to her friends and runs out into the rain so her tears won't be noticed. The teacher will invite the others to dinner, and while they're heading to the restaurant, no one can reach Nakami, so Shiromano and Magari go out to look for him. The senpai can't find her at the station, and by the riverbank, Magari finds him walking in the middle of the storm. She approaches him, and when she tries to shield him with her umbrella, a car splashes them even more. They both take shelter at the bus stop, and Nakami just apologizes. To cheer him up, Magari uses her phone to talk to him over the radio. She also feels frustrated because an unstoppable force ruined all her efforts, and our protagonist can't hold back her tears. Magari confesses to him that they've returned to the same bus stop where they hid from the police. That night, Magari was very close to him and her heart started racing because since then, she considers him a special person to her. Both are very embarrassed, and just when Nakami is about to respond, the bus arrives and they have to hide again. This time, the protagonist has something to confess, but Magari stops him with her lips, and just as she leans in to kiss him, Shiromaru finds them and realizes that Nakami really is a womanizer. When they arrive at the restaurant with the others, Nakami apologizes to everyone again, but it turns out that meteor showers happen quite often, and next time everything will go well. Ukegawa wants to know where they went because they look pretty nervous, and Shiromaru tries to explain, but he doesn't understand. Days later, while Magari is getting her clothes, her older sister is sitting next to her eating ice cream. But that's not so important since Nakami is talking to the student council president to raise funds, go on a trip with Magari, and get the photo to win the contest. Even though he kneels down to beg, he can't get a single cent from him. To keep the astronomy club alive, needs to get some money, so he fills out a job application. Ukegawa suggests that he ask his dad for help, but Nakami doesn't seem to get along with him very well, especially when it comes to money. At that moment, Harry arrives and offers her savings to cover the expenses, but they'll need $1,000 to pay for accommodation and food. At night, Nakami will start a new radio broadcast, and this time he's at the observatory because he's going to test the school's telescope. Magari listens to him from home and can hear how passionate and happy he is about his new hobby, and she falls out of bed after hearing exactly what she was thinking. Unfortunately, the protagonist didn't get accepted at McDonald's, but Ukegawa tells him not to give up, cause he'll find something soon. She goes to visit Shiromaru, but her cat opens the door since she was actually passed out on the floor. She was just sleeping, and since she needs to take a bath, she leaves Nakami in charge of the arcade. It's way too messy, so our protagonist cleans up before she gets back. Shiromaru was tired because she had been getting everything ready for an event at her arcade, and our protagonist confesses to her that he still hasn't found a job to fund his club trip. The senpai tells him to ask his family for support, but they aren't as wealthy as they seem. His father gives him a camera because he promised that he would be a photographer one day. And when it comes to money, his dad usually doesn't hold back, as deep down he feels guilty ever since his mom left. Upon hearing this, Shiromaru offers him a job at the arcade, and the protagonist's excitement makes him end up all wet, but at least he has a new job now. Meanwhile, Magari and her friends go to the beach, and even though they're having a great time, Kanekawa only went to find a summer romance, but they just run into Rui, who works around there. After a while, sends them some complimentary snow cones from some gentleman. On the other hand, Nakami continues working to gather the money, and the protagonist is planning to visit several tourist spots. Hiromaru brings him back to reality, reminding him that the more places he chooses, the more money he will have to spend, and the equipment they need is also quite expensive. Now Nakami has even more problems with his budget, but Magari arrives to calm him down. She tells him that she went to the beach and some guys were flirting with her, but it turns out they were just elementary school kids who invited her. The snow cones laugh because the protagonist was jealous, and when they review the issue with their budget, Magari suggests that they stay at her grandmother's house. There's no one there, and it's close to all the places they'll visit, which works out perfectly since they would save a ton of money. This way, they could visit all the attractions, and their trip would end at the Mawaki Ruins, the place where Shiromaru takes the winning photo for the national contest. On the way home, Magari is with her sister, who doesn't get along with her and tells her that she will join them on their trip. Days later, Kurashiki-sensei and our protagonist go to Magari's house to discuss the details, and while Nakami waits for her to come back, he runs into his sister, 2000 Magari tells him that she will join them on the trip and complains to her sister because she was wearing her clothes. It's way too hot to go to Nakami's house, but still, the teacher has to explain the club activities to her dad. And when Magari asks about her father, they are quite different. Nakami is a pretty talented kid, but one day his dad got a call from the school. He thought Nakami had gotten into trouble because he wouldn't stop running around in his worn-out shoes. When he got home, his father noticed how worn out his shoes were. And since Nakami never told him he was having problems, just didn't realize it. The teacher asks when she noticed those behaviors in her son, and it turns out that one day, while Nakami was sleeping deeply, his mother left them, which ended up causing his insomnia. Now, almost everything is ready for the trip, and their destination is Kanazawa. Shiromaru seems to know the city quite well since it was the place where he received his award. She had to learn on her own how to get there because the rest of the club never showed up, and Kurashiki-sensei offered to accompany her even though she wasn't her tutor at that time. Since then, the astronomy club has improved, just like her photography, and the only advice she can give is to take the photo when she feels her heart is ready to capture what she sees in an image. The senpai feels a bit embarrassed to say this to a guy, and Nakami appreciates her teachings. Magari and the main character go shopping, and when cherry blossom season comes, Magari would like to come see them with him. Nakami feels that it would be the perfect moment for a photo, and he is amazed by the beauty of the landscape. Before leaving, she leaves food for her dad and gets in the car, Magari and her sister. When they arrive at their grandparents' house, Magari shows him that the house has a view of the sea and a shrine that can be seen in the distance. Nakami prepares lunch and they eat together like a family. Since they both have the last name Magari, the main character has to call her by her first name, Isaki. Later, Hai finds a photo album among the grandfather's things. She remembers a trip when they were little and could only go to their grandparents' house because Isaki was sick. Her parents always asked her to act like an older sister and take care of her. Meanwhile, Nakami was exploring the area and made it to the shrine, and according to the weather, it looks like they're going to get some really good photos. Night falls and Haya visits him and stays to talk with the main character. He tells her that he never wanted to take care of a sister since his parents paid more attention to her because of her illness. Nakami knows about his heart problems, and Haya is a bit surprised. She tells him that she knows he has feelings for his sister, but she asks him to leave her alone since she doesn't want the Lawson to feel pity. Our main character tells her that he would never feel that way about Isaki. In fact, he understands her since they share problems they are resolving together. And before his little sister realizes it, they change the subject. The photo turned out excellent, and the next morning, Haya gets ready to leave since she's going on a trip with her boyfriend. Photography is really boring for her, and before leaving, Nakami asks for advice, but she doesn't need it. Since she was little, Isaki was always spoiled by everyone because they knew about her illness and treated her like a glass doll, but she never liked that. She felt frustrated because she couldn't improve on her own. Since then, she didn't tell anyone else about her suffering, which is why her sister always treats her like a normal girl. Now that he knows the secret, it's his turn to take care of her, and they have to leave quickly to get to the first attraction. In the morning, a little Nakami wakes up at home all alone. He looks everywhere, but his mother is nowhere to be found since this is just a simple memory. Actually, they're both on the bus heading to Mizukijima, where they arrive to photograph a rock. They don't have time to play on the rocks since they need to get a permit to camp, and everything is ready for the night. The wind is perfect, the sun is setting, and a light shines on the rocks, so they'll have to wait until midnight to take the photos. Since they have nothing else to do, they're going to explore the rocks. Nakami is about to fall, but Magari saves him, and at that moment the light fades, revealing the starry ground. Nakami takes the opportunity to snap a photo, and after setting up the camera, her first picture is ready. They return home and have the house all to themselves. They wash the clothes and go out to shop at the mini supermarket. For dinner, they take a watermelon even though they're running low on money, and our main character made some gyozas. It's time to sleep, so Magari heads to the rooms, but they both still can't sleep. They spend their time sending each other photos, and Magari opens the door so they can see each other and sleep peacefully. And so the days go by, visiting different landscapes and taking photos, and it's time to eat the watermelon. The days seem endless by her side, and ever since she came into his life, all the anxiety in Kami disappeared, just like she told him about her heart. Our main character also wants to share his secret, as he has had insomnia since he was very little. He thinks that if he falls asleep, the people he loves will disappear, just like his mother, and that's why he tries to stay awake for as long as he can. Tears well up in his eyes, and to calm him down, Magari approaches, looks him in the eyes, and gives him a kiss. She's dead embarrassed, and Nakami needs to go out and think for a bit, but he falls into the sea before he can express his feelings. Magari asks him to make it the end of their journey, and our main character succeeded. He just has to get to Mawaki to declare his love, and he's so happy that he wishes he could stay awake until dawn. The next day, Nakami fell asleep, but that's okay because it's a rainy day, 5009. This weather isn't helping to take the photos, and according to the forecast, it won't stop raining for at least a few hours. They only have breakfast left, but the food is also running out, and the longer they take, the more their money will run out too. Nakami is organizing the photos while Magari is next to him doing her homework, but she gets distracted looking at the pictures of her sister, and if their mother finds out, both get in trouble. The rain is getting stronger, so they have to go out to cover the windows. They put on their raincoats, but they still end up all wet. They enjoy lunch and spend the whole afternoon together. The rain finally stopped, but they have to wait for it to clear up, or it's another day without eating. But Magari had already taken care of that, as she called her friends to bring them supplies. Magari's friends came with Ukegawa and brought all kinds of food, including Anamisu's supply of bananas. While organizing the pantry, Magari finds white powder. Kanakami plans to use it for happy hour, making tortillas. Ukegawa watches the sunset with him. She prepares some tortillas for everyone with the baking soda she brought, and the food is really tasty because she puts in a lot of effort. After looking at the photos, Ukegawa sits down to watch the sunset with him, and Nakami is relieved that at least a guy came. Girls went out for a walk by themselves, and since it's so calm, their best friend asks if anything has happened with Magari. The main character neither confirms nor denies anything, but it's enough to realize that he's no longer the same grumpy person as before. On the other hand, the girls are by the riverbank telling some scary stories. They run back because they hear a noise in the woods, and it turns out to just be a deer that was screaming, along with a female voice. It's time for the fireworks to celebrate the arrival of summer, and Ukegawa sings to help set the mood while everyone plays with the colorful lights. Before leaving, they wish Nakami luck. He takes her hand, hoping for their future. Magari's mother calls. She also wonders if Nakami will be just as grumpy when she gets older and hopes to see that day. Our main character takes her hand, hoping they will spend their future together, and after a while, Magari's mother starts calling. It turns out she already found out that her sister left them alone, and after a long talk, she says that their parents discovered everything and want her to come home immediately, but Magari doesn't want to. They haven't reached the end of their journey yet, and after a bit of arguing, gets a message from her parents saying they'll pick her up at night. Nakami tells her that she should clean up before leaving since she's taking her to Makawi to take the final photo and keep her promise. Despite what her parents say, Magari is really happy, and they get everything ready to go on their trip. They prepare a letter for their parents, and our main character is really nervous because it's his first love adventure. Their journey begins, and Nakami is ready to face the consequences. When they arrive, it's still daytime, and the ruins are just as they expected. Both of them are really happy, and in fact Magari thought he would leave her at home with her parents. She's happy to be by his side, and really, all of this is thanks to her. Magari was the one who inspired him from the very beginning, and it's so embarrassing that it stops him right away. After taking some photos and exploring the place, night finally falls. The stars light up the sky as they set up the camera for photos. While they watch the constellations, Nakami remembers seeing that same starry sky with her mother, and maybe since ancient times, astrologers have been just like them, people with insomnia and lot of free time. It's time to head back, and the end of their journey is approaching. Our main character gets close to her, takes her hands, and confesses his feelings. He's so nervous that he has to do it twice, but he tells her that he likes her, and Magari is so excited that she wants to take a picture to remember this moment of happiness, one where they both appear. They set up the camera for one last photo, and the two of them lie down next to each other, looking at the stars. Nakami confesses that when he was a child, looking at the stars with his mother made him feel scared, because even though they just look like lights in the sky, they represent an immense amount of cosmic reality. And at that moment, it overwhelmed his entire existence. It's the first time Magari hears him talk about his mother, and in fact, she was also afraid of space. Hearing about black holes was always his greatest fear, as they could end this world in an instant. Yet, that same starry sky above them now seems beautiful, and this moment will be captured for eternity in a photo with the galaxy as a witness. Summer is coming to an end, just like this story, and Kanekawa tells Nono everything that happened with Magari, since her parents went looking for her all the way to the Mawaki roots. It's impressive because they never thought she would dare to run away with her girlfriend. On the other hand, Ukigawa tells his senpai that the astronomy club will finally have funding since the photo they took won a national award. At night, when our protagonists are more awake, Magari tells him about her radio show and how she spends her time doing her homework since she's grounded and can't go out until the holidays are over. They feel so far away, yet so close at the same time that remembering everything they've been through strengthens the feelings they have for each other. And even though they couldn't solve their insomnia, the nights won't be so lonely, long as you're by my side.